Call to order the Board of Grant County Commissioners work session, May 21st. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, as the symbol of perfect friendship among the united cultures.
Before we get started today, I was going to have a moment of silence for those that have lost their lives and they're still looking for in Oklahoma, and also for our the bicycle rider that was killed last week in Sapio Valley. So please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. First item on the agenda is to approve the work session agenda. Is there any changes need to come to the work session agenda?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and properly seconded to approve the work session agenda. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The purpose of the work session is to inform the Grant County Board of Commissioners of agenda items that will be addressed in the next regular meeting, and for the department heads and other elected officials to communicate with the commissioners in regards to matters in their respective departments. In accordance with the Grant County Resolution 1301, we welcome the public to attend county work sessions. However, there will be no public input permitted during the meeting. Next item is to review the May 23rd, 2013 regular meeting agenda. John, you want to go through the agenda for us, please?
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Before I start going through it all, I was going to ask one question to see for the Commissioner. We have item M, which is our preliminary budget. I was wondering if we could rearrange the agenda for Thursday and put that after approval of the agenda before the public hearings. And the reason why I ask is it's for personal reasons. I guess my son is graduating 5th grade, and if I want to be let back in the house, I'd better attend. And so I was going to see if we could have that item, and then I'll leave and go to his graduation and then come back.
I see no reason to let John.
Sounds like a personal Sounds like a personal problem.
So, yeah, unless you're letting me move in with one of you, let me put it that way.
We'll pass it then.
So you want M moved where?
Yeah, to the right after approval of the regular meeting agenda, so that we can go through the budget. That's the main piece that I have on the agenda Thursday, and then I'll leave and attend my son's graduation.
What time is the graduation?
9:30. They did it early.
And you really think you can get through the budget in 30 minutes?
We're going to talk about a lot today, and so there shouldn't be any questions on Thursday.
So Randy, can you make sure that that item gets moved right after section 3? Thank you.
So,
all right, go ahead.
Okay, so we'll go through public hearing number 1. We have a public hearing on pledging the distribution of the Environmental Services Gross Receipts Tax Revenue Bond received by Grant County, New Mexico from the New Mexico Department of Transportation Revenue pursuant to Section 7-20E-17 NMSA 1978 to repayment of Southwest Solid Waste Authority System Improvement Refund Revenue Bonds, Series 2013. We did the notice of intent to adopt this ordinance a couple of meetings ago, and what this is we're just pledging to use proceeds from the environmental gross receipts tax that we received to pay our bills to the Solid Waste Authority, that they'll use those funds to pay back the loans that they're getting. What they're doing is they're going out for the revenue bonds to consolidate all their loans they currently have, which will end up them paying off a loan they have with Grant County and with the town of Silver City right away, and then we'll just continue to pay them, which our bills to the Solid Waste Authority are more than what we receive in the environmental gross receipts tax. So there's no issues in us pledging that, because we'll use that money and then it will allow us we'll pay any additional out of the monies we collect from the residents. And so there shouldn't be any issues in doing that. The next public hearing is public hearing and discussion regarding application for a variance from the county subdivision regulations from BT Enterprises for the Wind Canyon 2 subdivision phases 4 and 5. We talked about this a little bit last time, that we may be having this, and the Thomasons are here with Mr. Perkins, their attorney. So I don't know if the commission has any questions of them. While they're here, you can ask questions of them. But that's what this is they're to come in front of the commission and ask for a variance to, as we stated, we've been working with them, trying to get the roads and the subdivision brought up to a standard that the county can accept them and start performing routine maintenance on them. Mr. Gutierrez, our planner, has been out there, as well as Mr. Moore, road superintendent. They've looked at them, and they've done some testing, been in contact with the Thomasons, given them that information, and so that's what's leading up to this today.
You have anything, Anthony or Earl?
Mr. Chairman, I think that the only thing that I have to add to John is that, of course, we've been working, trying to maybe reduce the overall cost of getting those roads up to where we can accept them for maintenance. I was able to kind of locate a type of base course. I don't know if I went over this last time, but we discussed it with the Thomason and their attorney. One of my previous lives, I used to be a lab technician for the DOT, and so I'm certified in soils and aggregate testing. So we're able to find a Type D base course. Although we've got some oversize in there, the percentage of the oversize was pretty small, and so we were able to find a Type D base course. Our regulations call for a Type C base course, but I think that's what my recommendation to the Thomasons is to request a variance from that type of base course. That's the only that's what the variance consists of, and so I think that being able to utilize the variance in this type of base course, I think that we should be able to have good material that we can maintain. I spoke with Earl about the whether or not it have any impact on our motor graders and our cutting edges, and he didn't seem to think so. And so I think that overall, I think we'll still get a good road, and we'll be able to try and get all those things resolved in that subdivision, so we can kind of take over maintenance, and those people will be a little bit happier out there. So outside of that, the only other thing that I have, I'm assuming that we're planning to kind of set the precedents for future subdivisions, and I think with some of the materials out here, I think it might even be advantageous for Grant County and some of the developers, of course. So we can work through it to maybe try and do some amendments to the subdivision regs, so that we don't have to go through the variance process every time.
Thank you. Earl, did you have anything?
No.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Anthony, could you talk a little bit about the terrain out there and how the variance makes sense with the terrain out there? I know that we've talked about this, and we've talked with the Thomasons about this, but I just want to make sure that, the public understands that, with different, even though we're all in this Grant County area, it's a little bit different when you go, depending on where you put a subdivision, on what might be best as far as the standards we use for base course.
Well, but I think that because of the material out there, we did testing on several of the roads. The conclusions that we came up with are that there's a really wide range of different sizes of material. We did some testing. We did some gradation testing that gave us how well the rocks fit together. That's what base course does, is it has different percentages of rocks so that it fits together and compacts to make a good overall material. And so when we did the test and we found that a lot of the material out there really was almost naturally in those percentages. And so we did some plasticity index tests. We show the amount of clay. And there were some areas that had a lot of clay, which means that it's called an R value. The R value is how much compaction and retention you get, and at what level it will break down, and with how much moisture. And so if R value is real high, it means it has a good amount of rock content, a good amount of clay content, so it stays hard and compacted. And so we had a couple of roads that are kind of low on the R value because there's too much clay in the material, and those are the ones that we're going to recommend that we cover with base course. There's also some areas that have some larger rock that we're also going to recommend that they cover those areas with base course. But if you go to the subdivision that's already covered in base course, you'll see that if you have an incline or a curve, the base course starts to segregate and causes the washboard even more than the natural subgrade would. So that's why we kind of came to the conclusion of this recommendation. Base course was not designed to be just left uncovered. Base course was designed to be in between the subgrade and asphalt so that the water can actually drain through. And so you get a lot of segregation. That's what causes all of the washboards, and that's what people mostly complain about whenever it's dry. So I think that by utilizing this subdivision maybe as a pilot project, I think maybe we can, there's lots of areas around Grant County that have similar material, have a lot of rock in it, very little clay in it, and so they make for really good roads. And so I think that if we're going to have allow subdivisions with dirt roads, I think that we should really take a look at whether or not we're going to place base course on at all. And so we may be able to actually reduce the amount of base course, maybe change the gradation a little bit to satisfy, to make it a little bit more compactable, and hopefully that'll work out for us. If you go out there, if it's a nice flat road, well, the base course really works real well. But once it has an incline or it has a corner on it, it really changes. So that's how I got my conclusions, and I think that we go to places that have a lot of rock, we're going to have to cover it. Go to places that have a lot of clay, we'll have to cover it. But there are a lot of places where I think that we can work with the developers and still have good roads.
Any questions from the commissioners? Any questions for the Thomasons or Mr. Perkins?
I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you very much. Glad you guys came. It's not as interesting as last week, but... Okay. You guys have a nice day.
Okay, go on to financial reports. We have the expenditure report. You have it in your packet. It's dated May 20th. And it's for $1,109,499.06. The major expenditure is the construction project at the conference center. It's $353,867.20. We're nearing the end of that project. The Corey Caminos building is done. Just going through the punch list items on it, and on the other portion, the only things that were left were doing the landscaping and the striping, which they've done most of the parking lot striping. There was a little section in front of Ace the other day when I was over there, but the rest had already been striped. Mr. Moore had gone through and fog sealed the entire parking lot, so you don't have half of it as new pavement and half as old. It's all the same color, which it looks very nice if you go by the building. It's made a big difference, and so we're about finished up there. Be able to close that out. And so this was the payment that was for this month in May. Everything else is pretty much normal expenditures. When you take that out, we're back down to that about $700,000 range for a 2-week time frame. So, under new business, item D is approved, disapprove proclamation recognizing June 1st, 2013 as National Trails Day. The commissioners may see some of the emails that go around. We have a large trails group that talks about walking and biking, trying to build new trails throughout the community to make it to where pedestrians don't have to interact as much with traffic as they walk. There's areas that they can walk in green spaces. And so they've come and asked that the commission would recognize June 1st as National Trails Day and urge the citizens and visitors to make walking, hiking, and bike riding on local trails a priority activity for themselves and their families.
I wonder if they're aware of how many trails are going to be cut for this transportation.
Yeah. And I don't know that they've been vocal on it, on that group. I really haven't seen anything from that group. They've been looking at the city ones and not necessarily everything out in the forest. So that's something we could bring up to them, to ask them, what have they looked at as that? Because that's what they're big on, is getting people out, getting them away, you know? And proof is the cyclist that was killed in that Sapio Valley is, if there was some way to get them to where we're not riding in the lanes, then you've kind of protected people. It's a lot easier. Next item is the appointment of 3 members to the Grant County Protest Board. This is for the assessor's office. It's a requirement that the commission approves the members to his protest board. They're serve a 5-year? 2-year term? 2-year term?
Each of these would be 2-year?
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, and John, it's 2 years, 3 individuals, 2 members, 2 alternates. And these individuals have been on the board since I took office in 2007, so they've done a good job, and it's just required at this time to reappoint them.
Do we have to name an alternate, or they just which 2 show up, or?
Well, as long as I give the information to Property Tax Division, which I will do as soon as they're approved.
Okay, thank you.
So what's the terms for?
2 years.
2 years?
Yeah, 2-year term.
And who's the alternate currently?
Excuse me?
Who is the alternate?
Sylvia Mike.
Okay.
The next item is under contracts and agreements. It's agreement number A-13-12, project agreement with the New Mexico Department of Transportation Aviation Division for the airport action and development plan in the amount of $100,000. This is, Justin's been working on the airport. It's a group that falls under him. He's been very diligent in making sure his projects get done. This is to develop an action plan for the proposed runway, new runway that we've looked at for a few years, to try and get that back on the scope. And to get us in line, we get funding through the FAA each year. This one is actually just through the state, where they're paying 90%. So they'll pay $90,000, we pay $10,000 for this, and it'll develop the whole plan going forward to develop the airport that we submit to the FAA, so that as our projects go in on an annual basis, we get approximately about $400,000 that they can see we have a plan, and these projects are within our plan as we go forward. We're just not asking for a variety of different things all the time. We actually have a plan on developing the airport, and it progresses towards the improvement of that crosswind runway, that new runway that we've been looking at for years, that's always been pushed down on the priorities at the FAA level. And
Is that the old dirt runway?
no, this is actually, we have, currently at the airport, we have 1 paved runway and we have 3 dirt runways. This is actually a proposed new runway that sits at the end, what would it be, the east end of the paved runway? Yes. Yeah, and it goes a diagonal. The reason why we looked at a proposed new runway is when our runway was developed, we have a 50-foot separation between the taxiway and the runway, and because of the size of the planes now, we start to get restricted on what we can, and the FAA has changed the regulations that for some planes, you have to go up to 100-foot difference between the runway and the taxiway. And so this runway will do that. This runway will be able to accommodate a 737, could land on that runway. It's long enough and wide enough. So it'll allow us to as they go through and change the aerial tankers. We're running into a situation, if they go to a larger aerial tanker, we may not be able to have them land on our base of our airport because of the taxiway separation. This will allow that to go away, that issue to go away. So it really moves the airport forward into the future. And then it gets rid of, when there's a crosswind, you don't have to pick a dirt runway. You actually have two options of paved runways.
So John, then that would take care of, several months ago, you and I had a conversation about, there was talk, it's nothing that's going to happen, but talk that the military wanted to come in and do some training in here, but because of the airport, they weren't able to do so. That would take care of that.
That would solve that situation. We would have no issues landing any aircraft that wanted to land, except for the new 787 jumbo.
The president's not going to be able to come in?
No.
All right.
So, but that'll alleviate that situation. So, like I said, Justin's been working real close with WH Pacific and with the state aviation group to make sure that we can get on track to continue our projects going forward there. The next item is agreement number A-13-13, program work plan and agreement with the United States Department of Agriculture and Wildlife Services for the Integrated Wildlife Damage Management Program in the amount of $27,500. This is something that's done every year. It's paid for out of the FRIF funds. It's the money that the ranchers pay for livestock and it helps with the damage. We've had them go out onto our airport before and help us with animal control, because we had too many antelope on the airport, and so they use fake predators and air cannons to get them off. They also help with predator damage for the ranchers when they're getting either the wolves or the coyotes going and attacking their animals or threatening their animals. They'll help those ranchers try and either trap them or remove the predator that's causing them problems. A very good program. We've done it, I don't know how many years now. It's been in place since before I got here at Grant County, and it's always worked very well. As the amount of cattle reduces on our tax roll, it gets to where we're getting close to a point, if we're not there, that we've got to make up a little bit of this money. But it's a very worthwhile. Most of it is paid by the ranchers that the service gets provided to. So, and I'm not sure who's running it now. The gentleman who used to run it is Keel Price, and I'm not sure if he's still around doing it, or I know they tried to transition it and get Type A's involved to be a contact down here, just as a coordinator to help out. At one time I talked with Ty, and then Keel came back into the picture, and so I'm not sure if he's still involved, but we'll find out who. The next item is Resolution R-13-26, authorizing the execution and delivery of a loan and intercept agreement with the New Mexico Finance Authority in the principal amount of $708,684 for the purpose of financing the cost of purchasing, constructing, and installing a public building in the county fairgrounds. This is the loan for the fair building. We've pushed it off a few times, delayed it. I think we're going now. The one catch that we've got to look at is the hospital's paying back the $10 million bond, and I've talked to Craig. We talked with the lender. They were going to pay it back on June 3rd. We've asked if they can pay it back prior to the 23rd's meeting. Just have to wire the money. What they'll do is give a check to the treasurer, and the treasurer will wire the money out, and then that alleviates any issues we've had with this loan. The issue we had is we're using the gross receipts tax that was also pledged as a backup to that $10 million bond the hospital did. And the hospital can be subordinate to our request of $70,000 draw on that if we do the full loan. If there is a 1.25 match, I think it's a coverage of 1.25. When we looked at it, we're just shy of the 1.25. We're like 1.1. And so the auditor couldn't write a letter, but paying back the loan alleviates that, and it just has to be wired. And so I've talked to Craig. We've gotten an invoice that was dated June 3rd to wire. Talked to the bank. They said they were going to send a new one. and we hadn't seen that yet, but when I left a message for Craig yesterday was, the current invoice they says just is dated through June 3rd. It just says this is what we've calculated. It doesn't say you can't pay it before June 3rd. They've just calculated interest and principal, what the payoff would be as of June 3rd. So I'm going to give them a call again today, and I'll get with Steve, that I think the hospital can bring us the check. We can go ahead and deposit it, and then Steve can make the wire transfer out.
Hospital needs to write us a check now.
Yeah. So we'll make the call after this meeting, and then we'll get that wired. They bank with the same bank we do, so there should be no problem in the funds clearing the bank with the check. We have about 140. Go ahead.
I spoke to the bank this morning,
Yeah.
and even if we get the check today, we cannot wire it tomorrow. Whatever issues they have, it's going to take at least 2 days. So
We can wire it the 23rd.
I've tried to contact Mr. Stewart for a week now and have never received a response from him. We billed them for the fees that have accrued on the account. I have not received response from anyone except Abby and telling me about the 22nd day payoff that they were trying to do. And they're just, I've tried to get a hold of them to let them know that we need to have the money and time to be able to wire it properly. The questions that I had, the same, it's $819.44 per day interest that's accruing on this. You know, are they going to pay it through the 30th, or the 3rd of June? You know, all these questions that need to be answered, and where the money's coming from, and so on. And the hospital has been very evasive, for lack of a better word, and non-responsive. So, yeah.
What I'll do is right after this meeting, I'll call Mr. Stewart, see if we can reach him. If not, we'll drive over there and find Mr. Stewart at the hospital, and we can make arrangements to get that money sent today over to us. And then I'll get with Steve. If something happens where we can't get it paid, we might just have to postpone this item till the next meeting, but I'll work with Abby and Steve, and we'll see what we can do to get it to where we satisfy the requirements.
Well, and I think before the 3 o'clock meeting, you can get a hold of the chairman for the hospital board.
Yes.
And let them know that they need to start releasing that information as soon as possible.
Yeah.
It's not only going to help us, but it's going to help them with their decision.
Yeah, no, and we'll do that. I'll get with Steve right after the meeting, and we'll see if we can't get that money transferred over to us right now. Because they told me,
Before 3 weeks.
yeah, the last time I talked to them is the money's sitting in the bank, they're just waiting to cut us a check.
Yeah.
They're ready to give us the check and bring it over, and I said, well, bring it. We can put it in our bank. There's nothing that says you gotta wait till the
You
3rd
got
to
time
put
to
it in
ride
our
over there with
bank.
John after this meeting and go get a check? I just go there and get one.
Yeah. We will.
Thanks.
So we will keep you updated. I'll let you know what happens.
Business as usual.
The next item is a resolution number R-13-32, adopting the Grant County ADA transition plan. We spoke about this at a previous meeting. I thought we did. I thought Justin talked about it a little bit. You didn't talk about it, Justin talked about putting one together. Justin's worked with Abby. Abby's gone through it. This is a requirement that we have the transition plan. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, we're required to adopt a transition plan, and that's what we've been working on. And what it is we're setting up a sort of a plan and a goal to evaluate all of our facilities and our roadways to make sure that they are reasonably accessible to disabled individuals. And we're setting our first target date is 3 months from your adoption of this plan. So if you adopt it on Thursday, Justin, who will review or evaluate all the facilities, and Earl, who will evaluate all the roadways, will go through all of their inventory and look for any barriers that may be there that, prevent disabled individuals from using our facilities or our services. So they'll go through and do their evaluations, and then we'll set up a game plan for trying to eliminate those barriers. And the requirement is that we remove, within reason, the barriers. So we'll look at, what are the most, the biggest obstacles, what are the least obstacles, and try to prioritize those, and look at our budget to make sure that we can afford to fix those barriers. Is that a okay description, Justin?
Yeah, that's fine. That's exactly.
And in the future, I don't think we have any federal money tied to this plan in particular, but if we didn't do something like this, well, one, it would be a bad idea, but two, also, we would be in violation of the ADA, and we could be reported to the U.S. Attorney General's office. So we got to get it done.
Does this address the ADA compliance by building or in generality?
General.
I'm not sure what you mean by that, Mr. Chairman.
I think
I just thumbed through it because we just got it. But I didn't know if it went in and actually talked about this building and its ADA compliance.
No, this is more just a general evaluation. We're going to go through and look at the factors that we've laid out in here. They're factors that have been used in other in other government entities' plans, and have been set forth in regulations to use as guidance, that we'll just go through and take a look at it.
Okay. Yeah, and what it does is it lists all of our facilities and basically says, criteria for determining would be the nature of the programs. We would try and either move programs to a building that was compliant or make the building compliant for those programs. We would, the community staff input, we would get input, the current state of accessibility, we're going to determine how accessible the buildings are. We look at cost, is there ways, if it's cost prohibitive, are there alternatives? And so that's what the plan's doing, not specifically stating what they are. Once the evaluation's done, that's what Justin will determine, what are the issues he needs to do to bring that building to ADA compliance. And if it can't be, how do we move the programs that would be for these individuals into a building that is? If the county admin building was compliant, would we move the meeting from Silver Street to here because Silver Street just can't be made compliant because it's an older building?
Okay. Any other questions? All right. On to the next one.
The next item is resolution number R13-33, adopting the Grant County Title VI program. This is one that Abby has been working diligently on for, it seems like forever, because it continually changes. And it has to deal with we received the money for the Corey Caminos, the federal earmark that came through the Federal Transit Administration. And so this is a requirement of getting that. I'll go ahead and let Abby give you a brief overview of it.
Mr. Chairman, like John said, this is tied to federal funds that we are receiving, and in order to continue to have a right to those funds, we'll need to adopt a Title VI program and limited English proficiency plan. And the Title VI program is an overview of, you can just take a gander at it, of how we're going to handle limited English proficiency situations, such as we'll have a complaint process, and we're putting like I said, a plan in place for addressing situations where we need language assistance. What else? We put together a public participation plan, which actually was pretty easy for the county because we always have open meetings and we give notice to the public of open meetings. As you know, recently we took back, I guess it's not that recent anymore, Southwest RTD, we took Corey Caminos back under our wing. So that was one addition we had to add to this plan. I should back up a little bit. We did this approximately a year ago. We put this together, and I don't know exactly when we submitted it, but it was kind of, I mean, they didn't really say anything initially, but then they said you need to add all of these changes because there was a revised requirement within the last year. I think it was in November it was passed. That required us to add additional pieces to the policy. Also in that time, like I said, we took Corey Caminos back under our wing. So those were the major parts of the changes. So, sorry, I'm all over the place. Back to the public participation plan, I not only addressed our public input and how the county brings the public into our decisions, but now we have Southwest RTD, or that authority board. I've added that here, and I added a couple requirements that are required by the FTA, I guess, as far as giving notice. Maybe just a little more outreach on our part, not too much. It's just as far as who we give notice to of those meetings. We need to reach out to minority and low-income groups, as well as limited English proficiency groups. So we also have to adopt a system-wide service standards and policies, and that is related to Corey Caminos directly, and it's actually not a very complicated standards and policies, but we have to address things such as they're kind of technical, the headways, how long in between our bus, how many times our bus stops at a certain stop, how we assign buses, our bus amenities. We have to address those issues, and let the FTA know through this plan how we are addressing those. So it's kind of a long process. In the LEP plan, that's really where the bulk of the work is. We just have to increase, not that much, because we already have such a large Spanish-speaking population and we have so many Spanish-speaking employees. We really address most all of the Spanish barriers that we have for limited English proficiency persons who speak Spanish only. But there's a few other languages that we need to address. Occasionally our sheriff's office encounters other languages other than Spanish. Say when they pull someone over that's a tourist, maybe they don't speak English that well. And Corey Caminos actually has infrequent, but they also encounter some non-Spanish speakers and non-English speakers. So we just need to expand a little bit in that area. And ways that I've found that we can do that is we can sign up for 24/7 services, interpreter services, where you just call up and say, hey, I've got somebody here, they speak Mandarin, I don't know what to do. They can connect you with someone that speaks Mandarin and you can figure it out. So we just had to expand a few options like that, or so that we have.
How do you find out what language they speak?
Well, there's a flashcard. It's in here. Actually it's towards the back, and it's not really a flashcard. It's just commonly known as the flashcard. But you show them this list of languages, and I think it says I speak
You assume
something.
they read English.
Well,
No, it's
look at it. You just show it.
all the different languages.
You kind of point at it, and they'll point at it and show you which one they speak.
Okay.
Hopefully they can read it.
What page is that?
Huh?
It's written in their
Native.
language,
Right, right.
their native tongue.
So that's kind of your first step, to figure out what they speak and
Indicate.
then see how you can help them. But our whole goal will be to just assist people that don't speak English as well, or maybe it's not their first language. There are a couple sections I'm still working on with Corey Caminos in the standard policies, or the standards and policies. There's just a couple sections we're still working out, but other than that, we're almost done. I think I need to add a little bit of information from Corey Caminos to our statistics as far as how often the county comes in contact with limited English proficiency persons. But other than that, I think we're about done, and I think if you review what I've given you now, you'll have a good handle on what this policy is and what we need to do. And as far as the cost, I don't think it's going to cost very much to make those minor expansions that I talked about. I think one of the services that I found for the 24/7 interpreter services was $4 a minute, and since we would use it so infrequently, I don't think that would be any sort of significant cost to the county. We may use some paper for translation, but mostly it's already built into our budget because we're already doing these things for Spanish. So I don't see a lot of increased cost for this.
So,
Any questions for Abby?
and this has been a difficult process. Abby's put a lot of work into it because when we originally got it, all we were doing is building the bus terminal. We weren't running a bus service, and so they really didn't have a model for that. So this Title VI is really when you're operating, and so it just was really hard to conform. And what the FTA told us originally was they don't really have a process for handing money out to just a capital outlay. You still got to follow all the requirements as if you were running an entire transit system. And so it doesn't really, a lot of it, now that we got the buses back, more of it applies to us, but at the beginning, a lot didn't really apply to us. We just had to do it to get the $1 million. So it was a difficult to kind of make it ours.
Okay.
Gotta follow the rules, their money.
But Abby's put, like I said, Abby's put a lot of time and effort into this. It's been a year-long process for her, and so hopefully she'll be done, and we hope we don't get any more we don't get any more money that requires that. Next item is the authorization of the execution of delivery of a loan and intercept agreement with New Mexico Finance Authority in the principal amount of $245,671 for the purpose of financing the cost of purchasing a water tanker for the use of Pinos Altos Fire Department. This is Captain Whitmarsh, or Chief Whitmarsh for PA. She's come and gone to Finance Authority. We've gotten the approval through their board, and this is the last step to get that loan agreement in place for the commission to approve the resolution for her to go ahead and acquire her water tanker. She's ready to go as soon as it's approved, and already got it picked out, ready to order, working with Jacob. So as soon as everything's finalized, she'll go ahead and get that on order so she can get it here for the fire season.
And the repayment for that comes
Comes out of her her state fire funds. So it's not out of the general fund. She's using her state fire funds to pay for that. And it's been approved by the state fire marshal's office. That's one thing that they have to do. If they wish to use state fire funds to purchase any equipment, they first have to write to the state fire marshal's office to ask for approval to use those funds for that. And she's received that approval before we even start the process of going through the loan program. And that's one thing New Mexico Finance Authority also asked for. They want to see that letter before they go forward, because what they'll do is do an intercept agreement, so they'll automatically intercept that out of her annual payment before it's passed down to her. So that loan payment, she doesn't have to, we don't cut a check back, it's automatically taken every year and then they distribute back. So it works pretty seamlessly. The next item is Resolution R-1335, budget adjustments for fiscal year 2013. As we talked about in this past, this is a requirement by the state. Anytime we adjust the budget, we have to do it in the form of a resolution. It goes in front of the commission. This is just to set up emergency management grant and restorative justice grant. For the emergency management grant, it's setting up the grant reimbursement on both of them, one at $50,000, one at $35,000. And then in the expenditures for the emergency management, it's training of $6,665 and capital outlay of $44,000. And then in the operating expense for the restorative justice grant, it's increasing the budget from $35,413.50 to $70,827. So that's just the change. And we have those, as we spoke before, as grants come in throughout the year. We don't budget for those. We go ahead and do a budget adjustment in front of the commission anytime we get those, because we never know what we're going to get and how much the funding will be in those grants. Now, the next is approved resolution R-1336, preliminary budget for fiscal year 2013 and 14. You have your blue book is the budget report that we've generated. like I said last time, Linda's done a lot of work on this. She's usually the one that does most of the work. I go through and make errors, and Linda goes through and fixes them. Even till yesterday morning, she got me in the afternoon. There was a couple items that I failed to put a negative sign in front of one of the revenue items, and so I was actually had a negative revenue in one of the accounts, and so Linda does a great job in catching all that and putting this together, and it wouldn't be possible, like I said, without her. She does a lot. I want to apologize for it not being done sooner. It's just with everything that broke loose up on the hill there. We've kind of devoted our time to that, and so I've been the lag in getting this done because I had changes to do, and Linda graciously waited on me, got what else she could get done until I made my changes, and then I finished mine and got them to her, and she put this together for you. I was just busy with all the items that were going on and looking into that. What we have in front of you, when you look at this report, it shows a couple years of activity, so you can start to see a little trend there. The 2010-11 data, 2011-12 data, that's the actuals from those 2 fiscal years out of our system. The next column, 2012-13 total activity, that's the activity as of the 20th of May when the report was run. That's what we're showing we've already done. You get to the current budget column, 2012-13, that is the budget that we did and loaded in the system that we're currently operating under until June 30th. The next line item, 2013-2014 requested budget. This is the budget where we sat down with all the directors and the elected officials, and they came and gave us their wish list of what they would like to see in their budget. That's what we did. Linda and I decided this year is we would put in a budget in the system that gave that. So that's what that column is. And then...
So that's the increase that they want?
That's any increases that they've wanted. Some of them, if they came to us with a decrease, that would be in there, and we went ahead and accepted that into the recommended. Or drop off. And so we gave it the office. That's kind of how we've done that. You see the comparison to budget increase or decrease is that next column, and then the next grade column is the recommended budget 2013-14. That's what Linda and I went through, and based on what we know right now on revenue, because we don't have final numbers, I've been working with Randy. We're probably a couple weeks out from getting our certified, or not necessarily certified values, but getting values, so we know what centrally assessed is from the state. They're waiting to go through the protest period, so we got a couple weeks before we get to really know our true numbers. So what we do is use last year's numbers. I've gotten some of the numbers that Randy has done here locally, but we haven't really received that state assessed. We've heard what the copper should be, but we haven't really got that number from them to see what it actually is going to be. So those are the items that you just don't know until after June 30th. PILT, those types of things. There's been meetings. We hear it's going to be reauthorized. Just don't know what levels yet. They say it shouldn't be any less than last year's. You're kind of just playing it, so we always budget those conservatively when we go into our budget. So the recommended column is the column that, like I said, Linda and I put together. There's not much difference between, on the revenue side of it, there's not a lot of difference just because of, for the revenues coming in, where the big difference hits is in the transfers between the recommended and the requested. Because of what we do is we take money from the general fund and transfer it down to the other funds, the road department, the corrections, the shooting range, the airport, to make up for the shortfalls that they don't receive in revenue. And so when we look at the full requested budget, we were looking at, we would have to transfer out of the general fund $2.5 million. It's the last, if you're on page 2, when you come down, you see our transfers in, transfers out right before the cash and bank line there, about middle of the page. $2.5 million compared to $2 million. So there's an extra $500,000 in expenditures in other funds other than the general fund in the requested rather than the recommended. Going through some of the major revenue items, we've talked in the past, this is the first time for Commissioner Hall to get to take a look at our kind of convoluted, the state's budget process is very burdensome. The majority of our revenues come from property tax. What we're saying is, right now, we're budgeting for them to be the same as they were last year, $4.6 million. Delinquent taxes, we're leaving that budget the same, $175. The treasurer did a great job this year, working on getting a sale and getting those collected. As of the 20th, we had $238,096 collected in delinquent taxes that have been transferred from his system into ours. When you look at the prior year, we were 180. So at a 175 budget, we feel that's a pretty safe. The treasurer's always working at collecting. Hopefully that number gets to 0 at some point in time because he's collected all the taxes and there's not a bunch out there delinquent, and that's what he's working towards as he reports in every meeting to y'all. That's been his big push, is to get that delinquent number down as low as possible. And so he's working at that and trying to come up with other ways to make it easier. But we feel 175, that's kind of historically about where we're at. One of the other major is the payment in lieu of taxes. We budget 1.4. If you look, we've been 1.7, 1.8. This year we haven't received anything yet. That's the payment that comes in. Usually we get it on June 29th or June 30th, right before bank closes. The wire transfer goes into our bank account so that we can record it in this year's books. From what we've heard from the sequester, we should be lower than we were last year. So we feel the 1.4 was a good there, and if we can maintain that or take a little decrease, we think going forward, budgeting 1.4 is always a safe budget, because historically PILT has gone down as low as 1.2, but as an average, we've been around the 1.4, 1.5 range average when you look at the years. And this year was the last year PILT was fully funded. That's why they're trying to get it refunded again at a full funding level. So we think we're pretty confident on that 1.4 again. One thing I've been talking to the chairman about, we've been having discussions, is this next year we're really going to start looking at ways to try and start diversifying the revenue to, if we can get some other streams to make up for that PILT, and then PILT becomes basically money for capital.
I said we got to quit doing this. Is exactly what the hospital was doing. They were using possibly non-reoccurring funds for reoccurring expenses. And I also spoke with the assessor and the sheriff, and I don't know if I talked to Steve about it, but we got to get to that point where we're not using those potentially non-reoccurring funds for reoccurring expenses.
Don't depend on it.
Yeah, and I spoke with Commissioner, well, he used to be former Commissioner Kelly, is now Mayor Kelly and board member of the hospital, Charles Kelly.
I like your sheriff.
Owner of Sears. He used to work for the county, and one thing that he did, because he worked for the county before he became a commissioner, he said that he remembers when PILT came almost 30 years ago when they first started giving PILT. They said, don't rely on it. Just use it for something. Don't rely on it always being there. And he said, and it's always been there every year. And so everybody throughout the state and throughout the western states has relied on PILT being there because it's always been there. Similar to what just happened with Sole Community Provider. It's always been there. We've been talking about it for a few years, that Grant County has gotten to rely on it. It's become part of our primary budget numbers. We've grown services, we've grown employees by that. It was being used prior to me coming here 8 years ago almost, that it's just been part of our everyday expenditures. We use that money to offset those. So it's something we would be in the same situation as the hospital. If we lose PILT, if they called up tomorrow and said you're not getting PILT next year, we would have to come back to you all for the final budget and say, okay, here's $1.4 million worth of reductions that we've got to find.
So why don't we start chopping on that since this year?
Since I've come
Just
in...
in case.
Yeah, well, and since I've come in, we've actually reduced expenditures by 10% for 5 years in a row. Each year, the departments have graciously come and reduced their expenditures. The only departments that have grown, and it's because of, I guess necessity, because of the change in the environment, is the sheriff's office has grown and the detention center has grown. Everybody else has decreased their budgets. We've cut a lot of money out of them. It used to be where department budgets would have a $50,000 to $60,000 carryover every year that they could spend on whatever they wanted. We got rid of that right away when I came, and let that start flowing back in. We started building some reserves in the county, and that's what's gotten us through this section. While everybody else was starting to lay off and cut services, Grant County has grown services and also grown employees. We've never cut. We've froze wages for our individuals, but we've done other things like pay for health insurance, pay 100% health insurance. So we've done different things. So we've made it through, and now that's what our new focus, Linda and I are talking on. I think this is our last year, this budget we're going into, and then I think the next year, when you look at the trends of the copper and the Century Assessed, they downturn for about 4 years, and then all of a sudden they start ramping and they come up fast. And this is following the trend. We're jumping about $100,000, a couple $100,000 each year. And when you looked at it historically, it does that. And then all of a sudden, PILT jumps about $400,000. Or not PILT, copper. The copper production jumps about $400,000 because of the ad valorem taxes on a 3-year cycle. You got to wait till you have 3 years of operating before you get that full cost in there. And I think that's what we're going to see next year. So we've got one more year of kind of getting through, and that's how we've prepared this budget, is staying flat, looking at, let's ride through one more year, and then I think next year we're going to start to see the copper production being at $2 million again instead of a 1.4, 1.5 range. You're going to start to see the property taxes in the centrally assessed start to come back up. So the revenues are going to come back up to where they were years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. I think you're going to see some change, and then that's where, and if we can diversify our revenues, what we've talked about is then you take, if PILT comes in and you're not relying on it, you maybe take a portion of it, a percentage of it, and it's set aside as a reserve, and then the rest of it is there for a capital outlay fund or one-time expenditures and not recurring expenditures. But you're always starting to build that reserve, so you've got that money in case of a rainy day. We do, in this budget, and we are required by law, we do have a 3/12 reserve, which is $2.5 million. Cities are only required to carry a 1/12 reserve, but counties are required to 3/12. So we do reserve $2.5 million every year that we don't touch. And so when we build a budget, we're not spending every bit of our revenues coming in. We've always got the revenues being spent, but then we've got this money reserved off to the side that the general fund sits at $2.5 million reserved each year, if not more. As we go through, and I give you those financials, that amount above the reserve is that extra. We were at a place a while back, a few years back, before the downturns of revenues, where we were at a 5/12, and that's where the previous commission wanted to be. But because of the downturn in the copper a couple of years back, where we lost the revenues and we're slowly starting to gain them back this year, we're now back to around a 3/12, a little more than 3/12 reserve. And we're working our way back up, but we're going to change the mindset going through. Linda and I have talked and working with the directors. So we're trying to do that, get out of this relying on federal monies federal monies are just extra for projects. Yes. So as you look through, we've just done that. Copper production, we do show that it's going up. It did go up this year based on the numbers we're seeing. We went from 1.4 to 1.6. So we did gain 200,000 in copper production. Gross receipts tax, we're actually lower than where we were in 2012, and the reason for us budgeting lower at that 609,000 is just for the fact that with this loan, if we approve this loan for the Fair Barn, our payment every year is $70,000, and it's pledged by that gross receipts tax, and so we're accounting for the gross receipts tax being lower by $70,000 already for that loan. So we're accounting for us to be at the $600,000 range instead of 680. Where we expect it to be based on this year's numbers. Those are the major revenues. The others are small items, clerk's fees, different things like that we receive. When you look through the different budgets, departments, the commissioners, the elected officials, on our recommended budget, all we've done is we've actually taken the true salary. I took a payroll and we calculated what the salaries would be off of one of our payrolls, and so that's why you see some of the adjustments. We haven't built in any raises in the recommended for anybody. Like I said, just waiting to get better numbers. The preliminary budget, we usually try and stay as flat as we can. So any changes in salaries are just adjusting it to the actual salary that people are being paid in the system, instead of where we in the past just threw in a number of 450,000. I actually took the payroll and calculated that on the salary schedules. On the requested budget, really the only increase is in the salaries. When we looked at it, was in the treasurer's office. We have both in recommended and requested, the elected official salary goes up, as well as in the clerk's office, and the purpose of that is because the raise approved by the commissioners only took effect for half a year in this budget that we currently are in, because it didn't take effect until Steve and Robert took office in January 1st. Then the raise kicked in. The past treasurer and Robert up until January 1st was at the lower wage because he can't get a midterm salary increase. So the new budget accounts for the full salary for that elected official of the $57,000 instead of the $52,000, and so that's why that difference there. We didn't give those two elected officials a raise. It's just now accounting for the full salary they get. And then the adjustments for that in the treasurer's office. Mr. Armendariz, when he spoke with us, he was trying to not necessarily give his employees a raise. What he was trying to do is do a reorganization of his department, look at their job descriptions and reevaluate their pay based on that. And so that's why in his requested budget, you'll see that he has salaries higher than what we had them in the recommended. And that's what it was. It wasn't a raise necessarily. Like I said, it was just looking at the reevaluation. He feels that when he looked at the job descriptions, they didn't meet their current duties they were doing.
Okay, so these are exempt employees?
They are union represented positions.
So does that have to go through the union first?
It would have to go through the union to look at job descriptions and everything. Yeah, and that was just a recommendation by him. I don't know if Steve wants to.
At the last meeting, or the previous work session, I had, requested more time to speak about this, but anyway, what it boils down to is that rather than request another employee, we were going to try to reorganize and reshuffle the responsibilities within the office. We're looking at an ordinance that we're requesting to be passed, but because of the issues of the bonds, won't be presented to you till June, which is going to require more work for our office. But like I say, rather than request another body, we were going to try to distribute the duties within the existing employees. And included in there is, of course, the increase for the chief deputy, which has been an issue from the past that keeps coming back. And the other issue is, like I say, trying to get the people within. We've just been sort of inherited the solid waste as part of our department, and trying to, while the girls have been now working, taking payments and so on and so forth, which they never did before, we actually have the solid waste installed on their computers, where if a customer comes, they can take the payment for Mr. Martinez. So, I mean, I feel that we have more than justified what is. It's a lot less expensive to give these employees a small raise rather than, and I've also asked to meet with the union representative to discuss this, because we have job description versus the new job description. I mean, there's a lot of changes in what they're doing and what's going on, and it's just something that HR has given us as far as the job description. So that's, our justification for those increases, so.
So the solid waste portion is coming out of their budget right now?
No, we move money in, well, the solid waste has its own fund, and what we've done is, Mr. Martinez, who collects solid waste, used to be an employee that worked under me. What we've done is moved that employee under last year's budget. We moved them under the treasurer, and we transferred money to the general fund to make up for that, because the treasurer gets his funding from the general fund. So what we do is we move money from the solid waste fund to the general fund to offset the wages.
Because if
And then
he's
he's
taking
been
that much
buying.
more work over there, then maybe you need to put him back under your department.
Yeah.
But that's just an idea.
Well, and the reason why we put him under there is the other treasurer, the former treasurer was going to use him for, and I think Steve has this too, is they're going to use him to go out in the field and look at mobile homes and do other things that are not dealing with solid waste. And so that's why he was moved under that department, so he could do more for them. And so I don't think it's, I don't know, I haven't gone and sat and looked at the work. Ted's still there. It's just, they're trying to transfer and use him in other places. I haven't given him any other work, and we've just moved him into that
Instead of sending out
department.
bills like in my office.
And just in defense of Mr. Martinez, he takes work home and does work at home, not because and it's just that much work to be done there. Now with these liens that are being filed, which will have the hearing at the next work session in June, the first work session in June, there's just a lot more to that job than meets the eye, and I wasn't aware that he was taking these reports home to do, because until I got the email from the Solid Waste Authority requesting, where's our reports? And then I asked him, he said, oh, well, I've been working on them, but, I just don't have time right now, and so I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I've been taking them home because I'm bombarded here. So that's when we made the change of allowing the girls to have that put on their computers, to where they can go ahead and accept payments, and they're right now processing his payments. I mean, he just has so many payments that he has to take once a quarter that he just can't, it's not doable. It's impossible for one person to do that job.
Going through the others, there's no, like I said, no changes throughout the rest of the budgets. Basically, when we met with everybody, they said they didn't need, there's things that they needed. We would look at them, working with maintenance, working with everybody. We're trying to reorganize how some of the way they do things to help reduce, I guess, the strain on their department. And so going into this preliminary, everybody's been pretty flat, and so that's why you'll see the recommended and the requested are close. When you come to the bottom line, the general fund, total for the 401, the total expenses are $9,247,786.33. Last year's budget was $8,956,000. That increase is really primarily due to the 15% increase in insurance. It's a huge, Linda and I looked at it, and if we could get a 10% reduction, that's $210,000. So the 15% increase was $300,000. It was a 15% increase to our insurance, and so that's what that main difference that you're seeing there between the last year's budget and the recommended budget is. The next department's got 402 for the road fund. Really not a lot of changes. We're kind of stayed flat on it. Mr. Moore's had some increases. He's requested some increases in some of his construction accounts and things to buying his materials. We put those in the requested side. In the recommended, we've stayed flat, like I said, just trying to go in and look at it. Just really, the preliminary budget is just to get us operating after July 1, while we look at the final numbers for the July 31st budget. So there's not a lot of difference between the two. Big changes is cost of insurance for his department. The next budget that we really take a look at, the rest, you start to get into different funds that are our grants and our fire department. The 460 fund, which is on page, it is on page 40 and 41 of your book. That is the corrections department. It actually starts on 39, is where their revenues start. We basically have kept their revenues that we think they'll be flat this next year. They get revenues from gross receipts tax, they get revenues from the town of Silver City, the other municipalities. We get a small portion from the state, nothing close to what they actually owe us. It's just they're kind of, a few years back, the legislature set aside $5 million, which is down to now $3 million that all these state facilities put in for, and based on the number of dollars you're owed by the state, they rank you by percentage of the whole amount, and then you get a portion of the $3 million. Ours is $75,000. It's nowhere near what's owed to us. A few years back when they set that up, the state of New Mexico owed the counties $51 million for care of prisoners that they had not paid, for parole and probation violators, state prisoners that have been awaiting and haven't been sent up. It's everywhere. It's been a big fight. And like I said, the legislature set aside some money to try and help offset that, but every year it grows, so it's really not knocking away at the $51,000, because we have more bills we send in, and now we just get a little portion. So the $75,000 we get is, like I said, nowhere near what we actually bill.
Maybe that's an issue you need to take to the association of counties.
And the association is the one that got the $5 million set up. They really pushed it a few years back. They worked hard. They're the ones that got the $5 million set up. It's a big unfunded mandate in the state. The state is not building new jails, or I guess new corrections facilities, and the counties are having to build new jails because we're getting more and more parole and probation violators, and we can't fit our inmates in, and so we're all going through and building jails to up our populations, and the state is just staying constant and letting us take care of all their prisoners and the cost, and they're not reimbursing it for it. So, they kind of know they've got us. We've got no choice but to house these people, and so they continue to let us. And I know it's continuing on the radar. Randy was on the board, and they were always looking at it, and I'm sure with the chairman now as the representative after the June meeting, they'll continue to push. It's on everybody's radar because we're all fighting the battle. Bernalillo County is one of the bigger ones that they have a large bill owed to them. I think their bill every year is close to $4 million they send the state, and they get back $300,000 or $400,000 on it, on a $4 million bill. So the big change between the recommended and requested, this is with our new administrator. Mr. Carrillo went in, took a look at the facility, and he actually, the first time that I know of, it may have been done in the past, but it's never been brought to me, he actually sat down with all the employees and had them give him input on not what they wish they had, but what are needs that they have. And so everybody in his department had input into what they needed, and that's how he came up with his requested budget. He's looking at, he would need 3 more employees in the facility, he feels, to operate it. With that, there's some overtime that would be required. Increase a little bit in his office supplies, fuel because of his transports. Looked at, this might have been my fat finger because I looked at that. It says $88,000 in capital outlay, but I think it's $8,500, or is it $88,000?
It was for the van, sir.
Oh, that's right. So it is $88,000. So I might have dropped an 8 on my side. So we got 8,000. Looking at trying to replace his equipment, we replaced 2 of the vehicles a few years back. The year before that, we replaced one, and it got T-boned by another vehicle. The guards turned in front that was driving and was hit, and so the van has never really operated properly, and so it's not safe for long transport, so they try and keep it locally. We got the 2 escapes, so we're looking at trying to do something there. The detention center's always gotten hand-me-downs from the sheriff's office when they had old patrol cars and they would get rid of, they would get them. So we're looking at trying to clean up his fleet and make it more efficient and more reliable as they transport inmates across the state. He has a small increase in his training budget, uniforms and vests. What he's trying to do in his recommended, he was trying to get over the years, the administrators have all kind of changed, and so he's got kind of a hodgepodge of uniforms, I guess. You know, everybody's got whatever is available, and so he wants to try and make everybody look professional and have one type of uniform in the facility, and so everybody always looks the same, and hold the officers to a standard of keeping those uniforms clean and presentable. And so it will take a little extra money to get everybody up to there, because we're required to give them 3 summers, 3 winters, and then once a year we buy them a new summer uniform, and then in the fall we buy them a new winter uniform by our contract. So that's why he had a little increase in that. The care of prisoners, it just historically it went up. We're looking at trying to do some things to, he's looking at trying to do some things to reduce that. We've got the RFP that's coming in that'll help, if we can get a healthcare facility in there, that'll help reduce that cost to very minimal. You're still going to have those inmates we have to send out for medical care, but the majority of them will be able to handle in-house, and we should be able to pay for that care through the indigent funds, and so it won't come out of the general fund, so it should help release the cost on the general fund. Currently, we spend 104, then we spend 79, then we spend 104 this year, and it just varies. We've had an inmate that had come in, that if we get somebody that comes in that has been, he needed a feeding tube, and so he had a feeding tube, and so we had to go and rent the machine because he didn't have his machine with him to feed himself with him when he was arrested. He wasn't from New Mexico, and then we had to go buy the food for him, which cost about, $5,000 or $6,000 a month for the food that went in his feeding tube, and so that was expensive. We've had inmates that have come in that needed cocktail for the AIDS cocktail before.
Cocktails?
It's AIDS cocktail. And that's about $10,000 a month. It's a very expensive prescription. We have to pay for those things. And so that's why care of prisoners, you never can tell. You do everything in the facility to try and reduce that. They do everything to try and keep the inmates as safe as possible, but you never know who's coming in. If somebody comes in and they've got a bum knee, when they come into our facility, it's now our responsibility to get their knee fixed, whether we did it or not, whether the officers that arrested them did it or not. This could have been an injury from 20 years ago that has just flared up, and they've been trying to get it fixed, and they didn't have insurance to do it. We now get to provide the insurance for them to get that injury fixed. Big complaint is the meth mouth. If somebody comes in and they have the holes in their teeth from meth addicts, we now get to give them a whole brand new set of teeth at our cost. It's the law.
Can we take diplomas?
Yeah. So and so you just never know, and so they're always working at trying to reduce those costs, but it's something you can't control. The other items, the feeding of prisoners, we're looking at that contract, and it's gone up some, our feeding costs, just because of the volume in our facility. We have a lot more inmates now than we did before. We pay per the meal. Mike's been working, we've been talking about, he's looking at that, trying to reduce those costs, making sure that they are billing us properly under our contract, because we have decreasing costs based on the number of meals. So the more meals they provide, the less it costs us per meal. So he's been really watching that. He's been real diligent. And then the housing of prisoners in Luna County, he's just, because of the variety of inmates you get in there, he's looking at that they may need some more funding in that. Part of his requested. So you see that his requested is 2.6 and we're at 2.2 if we keep him pretty flat except for the insurance changes. And we gave a little bit of the changes that he wished, but there's some difference. And we're working on that. We're looking at Mike, we're looking at the revenues as they come in. The jail is a big source. It transfers in $1.2 million from the general fund to help make it whole after its revenues. It just does not generate funds, and I don't think any of them generate funds anywhere in the state. It's just, it's one of those things that the counties and residents have to pay for.
So are we bringing in prisoners from Hidalgo and Catron yet?
Mike can answer that. I don't know. We don't have any agreements with them yet. We have agreements in places, but I don't know that we have any. We do get them from other places from time to time throughout the year.
At our last WACA meeting, there was mentioned by Hidalgo.
Yeah.
And it also was mentioned by Bucky Allred from Catron.
Yeah. No, and I spoke with Mr. Salazar at one time, and I spoke with some of the commissioners from Hidalgo about they want to convert their facility into a juvenile facility, and that we would gladly enter into a contract to house their adults and have a contract with them to house our juveniles. And I spoke with Mr. Carrillo on that and spoke with Joseph. I think it's a great deal. They're just not there yet. I know they're looking at it. They received some money out of this legislative session. I've never been in their facility. I saw the original design. Yeah, but because of the requirements on housing juveniles, it's going to be very expensive to convert their facility, and I don't think the money they got is going to do it. Because they have a lot of dormitory style, and juveniles cannot be in a dormitory style setting. They have to be in individual cells. It's just a very cumbersome job or profession to be in, I guess, to watch juvenile business. And so I don't think their conversion is going to happen as quickly as they think, but they're continuing to watch their own inmates until they start that process, is my understanding. And Mike can give some more information to you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I just met with the field administrator yesterday in Hidalgo County. Right now, their finances down there are not at the point where they haven't made a decision on their overall budget, what they're going to do with the facility. They were talking about eliminating their health care services, which I think is probably what they're going to do. But John is absolutely right as far as the juveniles. The statistics they gave me yesterday was they were going to require, if they did hold juveniles in that facility, they were going to require the minimum to hire 70 detention officers. And they absolutely do not have, and this is because of the state mandates, of how many detention officers you have per juveniles. And if they were to hold them in that facility at a minimum, they would require 70 detention officers, and their budget does not allow that. So legislatively is what they were looking at. So right now, they're absolutely undecided of what they're even going to do with the entire facility.
I mean, and that's on lines with what we saw when we remodeled the old sheriff's office and it was going to become a juvenile section. It had 8 beds in it, and they wanted us to have 19 officers to watch 8 beds, 8 juveniles. It's just, and that's why for us, it's $1 million to watch 8 kids is what the cost was, we figured. For Hidalgo County, if you filled that facility, it's got to be as much as ours, if not more, because of the requirements of juveniles. You've got to have doctors on site checking these kids. They've got to have 24-hour checks, 36-hour checks. You can't use the same type of restraints as we do. You have to have I think it's like a 1 to 4 or 1 to 5 ratio with regard to juveniles.
1 to 17.
Oh, it's 1 to 17?
Yes, sir. That's what he told me yesterday.
And I know when they looked at our facility, you've got to start at the first cell and go through the cells and get back to the first cell within 15 minutes. And that determines the number of juveniles you can watch. So if your facility's spread out in pods, you may be only to make 1 round of pods. You'll have to have an officer on duty for each pod, and they have 4 or 5 pods. So that's 5 officers plus your control room, plus your supervisor, any other administrative staff you have, plus extra officers for when those people are off or sick, it just becomes very cumbersome.
Yeah.
So,
Need to get into what?
but that's where we're at. Those are the basic, the major departments of our budget that we look at. Like I said, the rest of the budget that's presented to you is just the grant funding, the different, senior services departments that they get a budget and were given to us later on. Their budgets don't come in for our preliminary. Corey Caminos doesn't come in until October 1, their budget starts, so that's something that you'll get that we'll do a budget adjustment for as we go through the year, because it's a federal schedule, not a fiscal year like we do. I don't know what others, we have small budgets in there. The clerk gets his fees each year. We really don't have much of a change in there, and that's money that the clerk uses for equipment. You have the reappraisal fund that the assessor has, that is, he gets 1% by law, and he sets up that budget, lives within his means, has done very well. I think that balance on that is around $130,000 to $150,000 after his expenditures that he's budgeted for this year. And that's a budget that it's solely at his discretion. The assessor's been very gracious with us that he pays for 20% of 4 of his employees out of that budget, and 80 comes out of ours, so it alleviates some of the strain on the general fund. His new vehicles that he bought were bought from that fund and not from our vehicle replacement fund, and so he just uses that money to help offset some of the costs that, for his department, that go to the general fund that are within reason that he can do based on what his requirements are for that. But he's been very helpful. He pays for a lot of his training out of there. The development of his staff, going and taking the tests is paid for out of there to get him up to that certified appraiser in the state of New Mexico. He's done an excellent job in helping us, and so that really offsets, it offsets about $100,000 a year of expenditures that don't go through the general fund, they go through that fund. And so that's very nice. And so that's the same that we've done there. So there's not a lot of change. We usually go with his recommendations as long as the money is there. And like I said, after his expenditures he's given us that he wants to do for this next year's budget, I think there's still a balance of close to $150,000 above the expenditures. And so he does a great job with that.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. Does anybody have any questions on the budget for John? You got a lot of work to do the next couple days.
And any questions you have, myself, Linda, like I said, Linda's the one that goes through this. She knows the ins and outs of all those. I mainly work on those major ones that I did, the 401, 402, 460. Linda works on all the other funds. So out of 300 pages, I work on about 10. A little more than 3. There's 10. So if you have anything, let us know. We'll answer any questions. But like I said, mainly what we're doing is for the preliminary, we're going in flat, and we'll look at for the final, making any changes.
Next item?
The next item is the indigent funds, dated April 30th, 2013. As we spoke about before, these are funds going to claim against that money that's up there. It's not us sending money to it for that top section. The claims to be recommended for the 1,026 claims for $536,741.05. That's the sole community provider piece. The lower section, which is the 15 claims totaling $44,563.97, that is the indigent piece. That is checks we will actually send out that have nothing to do with that sole community provider payment that was held by the state and CMS. This is actually, Grant County residents have been gone, and they've been seen at Mountain View Surgery Centers, Bernalillo County Medical Center, Memorial Medical Center, Presbyterian Hospital, Rocky Mountain Holdings, Native Air. Those are the air vacs. And so this is by our indigent resolution, this is what they can claim for those services. And so we will cut those bottom checks, like I said. And Jacob has reviewed them, and there is funding for them.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move into county reports. I guess we'll start with the electeds today. So Sheriff, if you'd like to go, you can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. It's been fairly busy for us. We've been dealing with the graduations this past weekend and this coming weekend. Fortunately, it's been very slow for them. Good, nothing major happening during these graduations, just business as usual. I just want to bring up a little bit about some concerns as far as the fire season. We are in stage 1 of the Forest Service state fire restrictions, but I think we need to do something here in Grant County as far as the county. It's been very dry, as everybody knows, and we've been getting a lot of reports. We had one yesterday that they thought was a fire, was more dirt than anything, but the winds are pretty bad, and I'd like to see if we can maybe push something sooner than later, put some restrictions on our burning here locally. Other than that, it's been quiet. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Any questions for the sheriff? Okay, thanks, Sheriff. Mr. Treasurer?
How are you today? Good. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, we're currently at 91% collection for the 2012 tax year. Not counting 2012, we've collected 99.3% of the prior year's taxes. So we're doing the collections, we're working at it, and we still have a bit to go. So other than that, is there any questions?
Seeing none? Okay. Mr. Assessor, how are you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. Real quick, with all due respect to the women in the Treasurer's office, I would like to tweak my job descriptions and get that raised as well, John, if that's okay. But just kidding. But I mean, the thing is, I think that all the employees in the county, work very hard and have to do this all the time, and that's why we've been fiscally sound. I am trying to wrap up the 2013 valuations to certify to the state by June 15th. I'll have that done with my Deputy Assessor, Mary Guthrie. We're looking at an increase in valuation, and so everything looks good. I think state assessed will be up a little bit. They're going through the same procedures as we are with protests and valuations, so they're waiting for those to come in. So when you report to the state, you have a certain amount, then you have a protested amount. So that's what we're waiting from the state, and that's all I have. I just want to thank my staff for working hard again this year. If you have any questions, that's all I have.
Any questions? Thank you very much. Rob, you got anything? No report. Okay, Mike.
Mr. Chairman, Commission members, I have submitted my report to you, and I'd just like to go through it very quickly, if you don't mind. Submitted May 21st, 2013. So the first item is the policies and procedures. This was part of my 6-month plan. Currently, on an update, we have only 3 sections left in the policies and procedures, and one of the sections is going to be the medical portion of it, which is probably going to take us a little bit because we need to find out where we're going to be once the RFP comes in, and we'll have a better understanding of what we need to put in our policies and procedures. So that's probably going to be the only delay that we're going to have in getting these updated and completed, and then we'll submit these to the Association of Counties and to Abby for her review and for their review also for their recommendations. Item number 2 is, as you know, it's another update on the detention facility. The New Mexico Corrections Department did come down. They did an assessment on the facility. They will give us their report in about 2 weeks. They did a thorough job, went through the entire facility. They asked questions of all the employees back there, and they did their own assessments. So I want to thank them for coming down and sending their team. They brought team members from Santa Fe, from Las Cruces, Los Lunas, so it was a cross-section of team members that came down, which really helped us out with the assessment on our facilities. I also asked in item number 3 for a second assessment. I had the Luna County Board come down and their detention board, along with their administrator. They also did an assessment, and this was done last week. The reason that I wanted to do that is I wanted to get 2 independent assessments. And the purpose of that was to combine each one of the reports when I do get them for comparison purposes. This will allow me the perspectives that I'm going to get from both the state corrections and the local jails. And I think there is a difference between the two, but I think there's going to be some things in there that are obviously going to they're going to be the same. And I'm hoping that when I get those two assessments, that'll absolutely enable me to identify any changes in operations and safety protocols that we're going to need to make over at the facility, if any. They're going to give me the good and the bad, and I think that comparison is really going to give me a better perspective of what we need to do at the facility. Item number 4 in the training, Sergeant Aguirre just came back. He is a certified defensive tactics instructor. He enjoyed going to the training, and what that'll do is that'll allow us for him to come back and do some in-house training for all the detention officers in the area of defensive tactics, and also he'll make some changes to our reactive control model, which governs our use of force. And so that was the other reason that I wanted to attend this training. Deputy Administrator and myself and Zolo attended the New Mexico Gang Conference. I opened up the session as the director. We both attended, and we were able to attain 24 hours of accredited training. The other reason that I wanted to go also is to make some contacts over there at the gang conference. I was able to meet with a very good friend of mine, is Corrections Secretary Mark Intel, he's the director of the New Mexico Corrections. And in talking to him, he made a decision, and he's going to get a hold of his department head and allow us, the detention officers here, to attend any portion of the training at the New Mexico Department's Training Academy. And I thought that was really great, because that's just another training resource that we're going to be able to have. And also, Assistant Director Anzola he made his contacts also with the STI unit, which is the gang unit for the New Mexico Department of Corrections. I think this is going to be great. We both talked to him, and we talked to the unit director, and we got a confirmation that they will come down and they will put on a gang training for corrections officers and law enforcement. And what our intent is to put these flyers out to possibly Deming, all the southern part of the state. We'll hold a training here in Silver City. We can ask for a charge if we'd like to, and but what they'll do is they'll put on the complete gang training for law enforcement and corrections officers. And we wanted to take this one step further. I was asking them if they could not come down. I did this in Deming. I asked them if they wouldn't put on a community workshop for parents, teachers, concerned citizens, and do a gang training workshop. This will be a community forum, and I think it would be wonderful here for this community, so they can get educated, and maybe they can learn something about some of their family members, some of their kids, and just gangs in general. So we're going to be working on that, and I think that it'll be a positive for the community. We can get that done, and I'm pretty sure that we can make that happen, and I'll keep you informed on that. Item number 5 is the intervention. Through my contacts in Deming, also there's an individual, Mr. Norndorf. He worked for the Department of Corrections in Wisconsin. He's currently living in Deming. As he came down as part of the assessment team, I had an opportunity to talk to him, because one thing that I want to do at the detention facility is work on the recidivism. I think that's really straining the resources for the county and for the detention center, because we keep seeing the same people over and over. They just keep coming in, they keep coming in. And talking to him, he had put together a pre-release program for inmates for the Department of Corrections in Wisconsin. He copyrighted that entire program. He told me that he would come down and he would train the detention officers as far as our participation in the pre-release program, and we're going to put that together, and hopefully we can get that accomplished in the future, and we can start that training while we have the inmates in the facility. We can start that pre-release program, letting inmates know where their resources are, and try and get them out of the cycle of bringing them back into the detention facility, and hopefully He told me that it lowered the recidivism rate approximately 80%, the Department of Corrections, and they're still using that pre-release program right now. So that's one of my future plans, and hopefully we'll be that successful down here if we institute that program. Item number 6 is just an update. The lapel video cameras have been ordered by the DWI coordinator, which I thank her very much, and also she supplied us with an alcohol breath testing device. Whenever we do, we have the option of doing that during booking or anytime we feel that some of the inmates either are coming in the facility, work release, and those types of things. We have any indication that there may be a possibility we can use that alcohol tester and see if they've consumed any alcohol prior to coming back into the facility. Item number 7, we did the recognition award program, and thank you, John. Worked out very well. What we did is I asked the employees there at the facility, as part of the recognition program that I reported last month, John was able to get some theater tickets at the Allen Theater in Las Cruces, and he graciously gave them to us, and I put it out to the employees, and they selected an employee of the month for April. They were very excited about it, and I also added a little caveat to that, is I put a letter of recognition in their personnel file for becoming employee of the month, and I allowed them to pick that employee. So they're very excited, and I'll continue with that program as much as I can. Item number 8, thank you, Sheriff. We did apply for the Bulletproof Vest program to allow protective vests for the detention officers. The sheriff is the system administrator. I applied for the grant, and through his department, they also received a grant. He graciously approved our application, and I did receive word that both applications have been accepted by the Bulletproof. So what they'll do is they'll pay for half the cost of any of the protective vests that we purchase. So thank you very much, Sheriff, and thank you, I guess, Sergeant Arredondo. Audiano, I'm sorry, for working on that for me. He did a great job. Please tell him thank you for me. And the last item is just our statistics for the month of April. The population remained at the same. I think we were 84 last month. The males, our male population is 94. There's 19 higher than last month. Females are 88, and this is a red flag for me because we've got a significant number of females that are coming into the facility right now, and then we've got a lot more, and haven't quite figured out why, but substance abuse has a lot to do with that. And the max capacity again is 112. And that's my report. Any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much. Anthony, I guess we'll skip Earl and go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we attended the CDBG hearing not last week, but the week before. I thought it went well. I thought it was pretty positive for our project, and seemed that we justified the need, and hopefully that will be funded. On the other side of the scope, our Banfield application wasn't successful, and we received notification that we weren't funded. So, well, we're optimistic about our application. It was the first application I had done for brownfields, and so I had to do some research even on the terminology to use in an application like that. So hopefully we'll have a little better insight on the next application we do, and I will talk to our reviewer, see what we lacked on our application, and hopefully we can remedy that. And that's one good part of most of the applicants, especially if it's federal or state funded grants. You can call the reviewer, ask them what happened, why you weren't funded, and they'll give you some tips on what you can do in the next funding cycle. So the past couple of weeks, actually last week for 2 days, we met with a specialist from the Army Corps of Engineers, out there on the Gila. Although we seem to be completed with our project, there were some recommendations that he made to the rock that we put out there, to getting some more trees to try and secure that embankment a little bit better. Although we haven't had any high flows, they took a look at the overall system in that area, made some recommendations on what changes could be made to try and relieve all of that water that's hitting right next to the roadway. They made some recommendations that they feel that they can be an assistance with, funding-wise and with their expertise. And so I made sure to let them know that we didn't want to spend any more money, and that we spent a lot of resources and a lot of money, and even with the addition of the assistance that Freeport McMoran gave to us, it was still quite a job. And I made it clear to them that river restoration is about 1% of my overall duties, and the past couple of years just kind of came to the top. So we don't really go out looking for projects, but at the same time, I felt that we needed some type of standardization of practices, so that even if a property owner wanted to go in and protect his farmland or his house or something, that he'd have somewhere to go in some way of making the overall project a little bit more simple. We spent 2 years trying to get our project approved, and still didn't get it approved before we actually went into an emergency situation. So I explained to them what had happened to us, and I didn't feel, as an individual, I could only imagine what it would take to try and get some of those things done. And so I think it was a good discussion. We had a lot of the agencies there. The only agency that wasn't there was the one we have the most issues with, and that's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. And so hopefully they're going to give a summary of all the discussion. We actually had 29 individuals out there for our meetings, representing pretty much every agency, excluding the Fish and Wildlife. And that summary, hopefully we can use that to try and leverage some things with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So real successful, I think. I learned a ton in those 2 days, that's for sure. The Fair Barn project out there, the demolition is complete. Working with Earl, and we got a surveyor out there going today to give us to plot out the corners of the building, to give us some grade out there so we can bring that grade up before they start the building structure. I think that the plan was to put those pads out there and then try and backfill around them, and we felt that it'd be not only time consuming, we'd have to wait until the project was completely done to be able to do that. So we're going to bring up the grade. Spoke with the contractor. He didn't seem to feel like it was going to have any impact on what he had to do. I had several conversations with him, and so if there is some impact, we may have to have a small change order and take care of that, but I think overall it should work out better. The only other thing is, of course, the AWSA. There's meetings today. The San Francisco Water Commission meeting is at 2 o'clock. I will be in a different committee meeting trying and get some type of agreement with the ISC about what type of role the San Francisco Water Commission will play once they come down to making a decision to send a letter to the Secretary of Interior. So outside of that, we're going to take a look at maybe some EDA grants applications. We got a new round of grant applications to apply for. We may try again to do a planning grant for transportation type planning grant. Last time we did that, we weren't very successful. All the grants that the federal government puts out are nationwide, and sometimes our projects are too small in order to qualify. So when you have a big major intersection like the Big I in Albuquerque or something like that versus our Rosedale Road or something like that, so it's pretty easy for them to take to kind of toss off to the side. So, but other than that, that's all I got.
Questions for Anthony?
Yes, have we heard from the surveyor for the two subdivision assessment districts?
We currently have, Lonnie Sandoval actually took the signature page for Loma Verde. He felt that he could be able to get the signatures a lot faster than we could, and commend him for that, and I hope he's successful. The other, I think, is in, right now, I think it will have a public hearing on the 19th, July 18th, to get that process started. I would like to mention, and plus, we had conversations with, of course, we're moving forward with Wind Canyon, but we also have the Wind Canyon Estates. People are doing exactly the same thing. We had a meeting yesterday with them, made it clear to them that until those roads were dedicated, there was really nothing that we could do. I recommended that they could hire somebody and to maintain that road. It could be at a minimal cost. If 10 people get together, it would cost them, $20 or maybe $30 to get that whole thing done, until we can actually get it maintained by the county. So I think we're going along. But I would like to remind people, though, that number one, the assessment district itself takes months to be able to do, and that doesn't even include all of the staff time and things to get prepared to get to that point. With assessment districts, we went from having none to 3, and so it's just a lot of added duties to everyday life we have over there, and so if people get impatient, those things just take time. And I try to express that to everybody that is involved in one of these things, and hopefully, and I know they get frustrated because they feel that it should be done right away. They need their road bladed tomorrow or the day after, and it just doesn't happen that way. And we apologize, but that's just the way it is. I don't know what else to say.
Kind of reiterate on that, to let commissioners know, kind of the process from here. We've started the petition. Well, now Dory's researched, and we now have to have 30 days notice of a public hearing, so we're noticing to have a public hearing on July 18th. At the public hearing, the commission, if they choose to go forward, will have to approve a resolution of a notice of intent to adopt an ordinance, and we're required to have 2 weeks notice before we bring the ordinance in front of you. Then you get the ordinance, and by statute, an ordinance doesn't come in effect and can be protested for 30 days. Then once the ordinance is approved, we'll start the process with New Mexico Finance Authority to try and get a loan, and that requires an ordinance to come back in front of the commission. So it's a long process, but in the piece of the New Mexico Finance Authority, Earl can go out there and start to do some of the work, the prep work and things that we're going to be doing with, if we do it with our equipment and things. But the way we're doing it, we've got, you're 6 to 8 months, and it's just because of you have these 30-day waiting windows before you can do the next step, and then you got to wait 2 weeks, and then you do the next step that requires another 30-day waiting window, and so it's out of our hands, and so we're moving it as fast as we can, and we're getting them in. It's just the requirements to follow it properly, because if you don't follow it properly, then it can be protested, and it can affect the whole improvement district, how it was set up. So we're making sure all the steps are followed properly. So that's kind of where we're going now, is we'll be the 18th for these public hearings, and then we'll still be several months down the road from there.
Anything else for Anthony? No. Thank you very much, Anthony. Earl?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We got most of all the roads that we're going to chip seal this year done, except for the truck bypass. And we're out there patching on it. We're not having very good luck today. I don't know if somebody ran over a power pole or something there at the Chevron station this morning, and the power lines are down, and they're deterring traffic through that thing. So I just told them guys to find a pole out of there. We're not getting much accomplished, but backing up traffic. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen transformers laying all over the road, power lines everywhere, so they've got all the traffic deterred through there. So anyway, we're working on that. It's the last road that we're going to chip seal this year. I did get the preliminary offer back for the LGRF for the 2013-14 year. I asked for $100,000 more, and they cut me $2,000 from what I got last year. So
I asked for $200,000.
Yeah. So I'm afraid to ask for anything extra now. So We did, like John said, we did get the, parking lot, fog sealed over there. Been working with Anthony on those fair barns. That's how come I keep stepping out on the phone. I've got, vendors calling and asking questions about that, as far as getting that pad built out there. Other than that, it's pretty much, business as usual out there.
Okay, any questions? Thanks, Earl. Justin?
That's good, Commissioners. We've been working on the Garcia fence is going to be out there this week. They're working on the batting cage to make the metal frame for that batting cage to make sure it's secure. We won't have that issue again with it collapsing on us. Also, we've had facilities that have been used over the last couple of weekends for graduations, Fort Baird area, and also the conference center. We've had a lot of usage out there. Every weekend we have booked for from May, we've been booked for both facilities. Have been booked every weekend, and June we're booked every weekend, both facilities, and also in July. So the facilities are really getting used a lot. Actually, right now we do have Santa Clara Elementary's out there at Fort Baird. We had Baird Elementary out there yesterday. I got Stella Elementary out there Thursday, and then we do have the facility rented all weekend for graduations, and that's both the concession stand and the large pavilion. So we're getting a lot of usage out there. So we've been busy out there. Also, I've spoke with the bug hunter about doing some spraying out there at Fort Baird. I think we might try to get him on board about spraying some of the facilities up there around the rock area, around the fields, and some of the pavilions to help with some of the maintenance for us to catch up on everything we need to do, because now the weeds are going to start growing. We've been bouncing around from senior centers to senior centers, cleaning those up, the courthouse, around the facility here. I'm trying to stay on top of the weeds before the rain season comes in, because we will be busy.
You assume it's coming?
It's assuming, yes. Sooner or later, it's going to come. So, besides that, that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Justin?
Nope.
All right. Thank you. John? Short.
I wanted to give commissioners an update on the front of the building. What we've done is we've got a contractor in place that's going to start working. Last I heard, the plan on the entire front being done by the end of July at the latest. So you'll start to see him out there. He'll be working with Earl's crews. And basically what's happened out there, I've explained it, is we used to be allowed to do our own work because we have qualified individuals, and what the state's saying is now we have to have a qualifying partner that has taken the GB98 test, that the county will hold the license. We'll have a qualifying partner before we can do any work. So they're making us go out to contractors, so we've gone out for the labor of doing it because we already have all the materials and the forms. And so Earl will be working with them. His crew will go ahead and do the demolition of the rest of the materials as needed, working with the contractor. Kevin Robinson, our architect on our project, is doing a great job. Put together the paperwork to get the bids in that we needed. The quotes, not bids, I guess the quotes. We had a local gentleman come in, well, 3 local gentlemen put in, and I just don't understand. It was read differently, obviously, because the low man was $18,000 to do the job, and then from there it went to $61,000 and then $81,000. So, and it was just labor. So, I guess I don't know how to explain why it was so varied, but it was. But the gentleman that can do it is actually a very good concrete finisher. I think it's Outback. It's Martin Wright, I think this is the gentleman's name. Does an excellent job with concrete work, and so I think he'll do a really good job. So that we should see that taken off. He was going to get the permit, pull the permit under his name so that he can start going on that project and getting it complete. Just was waiting for an inspection. They have to come out and inspect the work that was already done by Earl's group, which Mr. Robinson said that he has no problem signing off on. He had inspected it as they went, and it met all the criteria. So he just has to sign off, and then he can proceed forward. So that's what we're waiting for there. And then that project will take off and be done shortly. The walkway will be heated so that this winter we won't salt it anymore. It'll have a new handicap access ramp that comes straight up in the parking. And so the handicap access ramp and the walkway will be all heated. And so you don't have to worry about it. We set on a thermostat, so as the temperature drops, it'll automatically start warming the concrete, so you don't worry about freezing or slick spots on that. And so it'll alleviate that issue. What caused our problem is salting it so much, trying to keep it down for the public to be safe. It just deteriorates that concrete, and so we'll eliminate that. So it'll be really nice going forward. We're not going to do the canopy right now. We'll put a handrail up and then look at going forward at doing a canopy over it, similar to what's at the conference center, to try and make our buildings start to look similar, and so they all have a look to them. We are, after just going into June, Randy sent something out to y'all. We're looking at keeping the meetings regular in June, and in July, switching our meetings to just having one right in the middle, the 16th and 18th, instead of having the 2 meetings in July. We may have to call a special meeting for budget, just depends on if we've got some numbers and can do budget on that 18th meeting. Otherwise, we might have to call a special meeting because the final budget's due July 31st. And so we want to make sure we give you the right, a good, solid budget when we get there and not rush something. And so if all the numbers are in, we'll be at the July 18th. Otherwise, we'll call a special meeting for the purpose of budget only. And then August will go back to the regular schedule. It's just that month of July. In June, we have the Association of Counties meeting, and so several of us will be traveling to that. In Clovis, it happens to hit right between commission meetings, so we'll have our meetings, and then the next week we go to those trainings, and then we'll come back. And so that's the major stuff
We may
going
have to
on.
talk about August, but we can do that later.
Yeah. Okay, and so, other than that, and I appreciate the commissioners allowing me to move that budget up so I can present that and go and see my wife's baby there, the one that gets all the goodies, graduate from 5th grade. We're all surprised he made it. He doesn't obviously take after me, he's taking after my wife. And moving on.
Any questions for John? Okay, Commissioner?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to see if we can invite the United States Forest Service and ask them what kind of plans they've been putting together after the Mogollon Baldy fire in protecting our riparian areas, and what kind of improvement plan do they have in place. I also wanted to see what kind of tree thinning plan that they have, so that we can try and avoid this kind of catastrophe again. So, I definitely want to see if we can get them at the next meeting, if not the following. I know it's fire season for them right now, but surely they've got some plans in place, and we need an update. Being that it's in our county, we don't want something like last year to happen again. So I definitely want to see what kind of tree thinning plan they've got, and what kind of protection that they're putting together for our riparian areas.
Based on the Whitewater Baldy?
Yes, sir. I also wanted to congratulate the boys track silver team. They did an outstanding job. I had the opportunity to see them run, and them boys are just amazing. They did a fantastic job. I'd like to just throw in a little shout out to my niece, won the 100. She's a state champion of 100 from Mayfield. She had the fastest girl score throughout the whole state. Also wanted to throw a shout out for the boys baseball team at Colbury. They did an awesome job. I had the privilege to see them play. Girls softball for Silver City. Congratulations to state again. I believe this is the 3rd time in a row. And they did an excellent job. I was privileged to see them play also. And of course, my daughter's team at Colbury, they took 2nd place, and I'd like to congratulate them. And I believe we've already spoke about this, but we need to get some proclamations for the state champs in this area. I can't believe how well these teams have really represented this area. They've done a fantastic job.
Can we set those up for June 13th?
That's what we were looking at, just because of this week is finals week for a lot of the students, and so we figured it would be easier if we did something in June. We'll probably miss some because they'll be on vacation, but that will be the way, and so we'll try and work with Randy, can contact the schools and see if they can start arranging it before the students take off.
Thank you. Anything else, sir?
That's it, sir.
Commissioner?
Well, Commissioner Ramos stole some of my thunder. My hoorah. I know.
I'm an equal
I'll take it. Yeah. I like to do hoorahs for our Silver High champs anyway. Fine group of people, both the state champs. As far as the girls, the three-peat, that's pretty impressive. I guess next time that they set they'll put us in number 1 where we're supposed to be in rather than number 2, because we went through it and took everyone pretty handily. Also, the boys, that's 2 years in a row, I think.
Yes, sir.
2 years in a row that the boys field and track team has won state championship. Hoorah for my godson, Dakota Bencomo. He's the state champ in the javelin, and he ran some other races too, but they did an excellent job. And we finally beat St. Mike's. They've been taking stuff away from us for 2 years. And so we beat them, and it looked like it was tied for a long time, and then we came up and we did beat them almost by 10 points. But besides that, I want to congratulate the graduates. Graduates of Colby, the graduates of Cliff, Silver High, Leopold, and those others, and including Western. Great job. We're proud of you, and job well done. So that's about all I have.
All right. I don't really have any report. I have a request. I think it's that time that we start discussing the manager's contract, so I would ask that we add an executive session to the meeting to review and discuss the manager's contract and goals. And for Thursday.
You'll be gone.
Oh, you're leaving?
No,
Well, it's all right. You don't really need to be here.
no, I'll be back.
We'll talk about you if you're here or if you're not
I
here.
don't. I'll be back, don't worry.
It'll be after the meeting. We'll hold it after
Text
the
me.
meeting. And I'll make it perfectly clear. It's the first start. I told John, he asked to have it reviewed in January, and I told him I wanted to review it after I saw the budget, and he graciously agreed, but it's coming up in January, and I think that's, and if we're going to renew it, we need to give him 6 months.
I don't want to
notice
see
that
it
we're
till
going
after
to.
negotiations are over.
You want me to just go to negotiate? Okay, so I want that added either way. And that's all I have, so at this time I take a motion to adjourn. Second.